it's important for a person to ask themselves, where is the source for what this rabbi is saying? And who else agrees with him? Now, he can tell you a source, but if you're not a scholar yourself, you don't know what to do with the source. He can tell you this is in the Gemara, such and such. And you can open the Gemara, but you have no idea right or left of what the Gemara is saying. He can tell you, listen, the Posek, Rav such and such said it. And you have no idea who this Rav is, but if he said some other rabbi said it, okay, fine. It's important for you to use your common sense. Listen, is what he's saying what the biggest rabbis in the world are saying? Is what he's saying in line with what Judaism has always been? Not what Judaism is today in the public, which is a mixed batch of good and bad, unfortunately. Some more bad than good at times. No, is this what we did throughout the generations? Is this what we did throughout the generations? Is this what was accepted throughout all of Judaism, throughout all of history? Now you're going to say, listen, sometimes you're going to have a different strategy in your community because you're saying, listen, it doesn't say that I'm not allowed to do certain things. I'm not allowed to behave in certain ways. In the Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't even talk about this. So therefore, this is an HaShkafic issue. This is an ideological issue. And since the ideology of Judaism is not codified, there isn't like one specific book that tells you ilchot anger, how to deal with your anger, ilchot of, doing, no, there isn't. It wasn't codified like the other laws. So therefore you would think, so since there is no specific codification for the HaShkafa, for the ideology, therefore all I have to worry about is yes allowed, no not allowed. Wrong. A very well-known Talmid Chacham by the name of Rav Yaakov Shapira has an extraordinary write-up that a friend of mine sent it to me recently, and it's definitely worth our time to learn what he says word for word, because he deals with this topic in a very, very extraordinary way. I generally love to highlight Talmidei Chachamim that are alive, not just the ones that have passed, especially since the issues of ideology, of HaShkafa, are typically the most confused ones. People have no idea what to do with it. So he says the following. He says there was a question that came up. Question is, if you don't have to follow a single posek in halacha, and you don't, then surely you don't have to follow a single person's HaShkafa or da'at Torah when there's a disagreement. And he says, simple answer, this is wrong. Wrong ideology. Thinking that you don't have to follow a single person for HaShkafa is wrong. Why? It's wrong, and it's unfortunately represents the common view in many modern Orthodox circles that when it comes to halacha, you have to listen to your rabbi, but HaShkafa, they're simply opinions that are more subject to individual preference. That's the ideology of today. That HaShkafa, that ideology is simply your opinion versus my opinion. You are a modern Orthodox, I am Haredi, you are Hasidish, I am this, I am that. People think that just because you are this and I am that, therefore that we don't have the same Torah. Wrong. Or sometimes people will go even further. They'll even distort halacha, where they'll say, listen, I'm inviting such and such to my house for Shabbat. Oh, is that person is going to sleep at your house also? No, he's conservative, so he drives, it's okay. As if just because he's a he follows the heretical views of the conservative Jews, or the Reform Jews, or sometimes, unfortunately, the modern Jews, it's allowed for him to drive because he's conservative. There's nothing more wrong with it, but this has to do more with the HaShkafa than it does have to do with halacha. And the reason is as follows, where it first starts with a person needing to know that this type of thought, Rav Shapiro says, is plain kfirah, is heresy. Just as there is correct halacha, there's also correct HaShkafa, as mandated by the Torah, that you have to have them. As it says, Lo taturu achei levavchem, that you should not follow the ways of your heart. The Gemara says this is referring to heresy. that following the ways of your heart is the heretical beliefs that a person has. Any idea that disagrees with the opinions of the Torah, which is the Da'at Torah, says the Chinuch, which is one of the Sfarim that we've talked about in the past, about 800 years ago, and also the Mishnah Berurah, say that this type of behavior is heretical. This foreign concept, this type of mentality of thinking that you can just, have your opinion of what HaShkafa should be, and I'll have my opinion of what HaShkafa should be, is the heretical thinking or the heretical brainchild of Moshe Mendelssohn, Yimach Shimo, who said that Judaism doesn't matter as far as what you believe, but rather how you behave. This, you'll see, is also the types of belief system that's preached by Meza and his teacher Prager and all of the people that are like them. All these so-called rationalists, that's in essence what they're saying. Follow halacha, but as far as how and who and what and when and the HaShkafa, that's all subject to your own interpretation. The reality is, Rav Shapiro says, is that the idea of HaShkafa is a free-for-all, is a modern-day strain on the of the Mendelssohn Apikorsut, and it was really the product of the Maskilim, the Enlightenment movement. And the truth is that Torah HaShkafa and Torah Halacha are both the possessions of those who have Torah knowledge, and those who have Torah knowledge only. So a violation of Torah HaShkafa, even if it doesn't violate any specific halacha, is a sin and is punishable in the same way. This is because the Torah demands, al pi halacha, if you will, that you have the Torah's hashkafa. That in essence, the Torah itself is obligating you to have a Torah ideology. And what I understand someone to mean when he says that there is more options in halacha is not that halacha is per se less authoritative, chas v'shalom, but rather that a new halachic questions arise almost every day, and therefore you have the contemporary Torah authorities debating and disagreeing over them. These new halachic questions have not been discussed by your predecessors and are first being dealt with today. Therefore, there's no explicit precedent or prior authoritative decision. In essence, the responses that you see today, or the debates that you see today among the poskim, it's not rediscovering the wheel. It's not new things that are being created as far as by change, or new innovations, if you will, they're changing the original law, but rather things that weren't discussed in the past. Weren't discussed in the past because there's new innovations in the world. There is the Shabbat timers, there's electricity, there's obviously automobiles, there's different medical equipment, how you treat medicine, there's certain things that are considered lesser of life risk today than they used to be considered in the past. So the poskim delve into these topics today that weren't discussed in the past because they weren't relevant in the past. So that new responses, new halachas, and so on is not saying that the previous halachot, the previous teachings are less meaningful or less value, chas v'shalom, but rather it's simply telling you that right now there is a debate over how to apply the pre-existing law into the current reality. But the Torah HaShkafa, though, the ideology on the other hand, although there are sometimes questions of how to apply an established Torah HaShkafa to individual situations, the core HaShkafa do not necessitate a from-scratch analysis. What the Rambam and the Rashba believed hashkafically applies to us today, and the Mesorah is much more clear when it comes to proper Torah beliefs than proper halachic decisions, since new technology and circumstances do not necessitate a new evaluation of HaShkafa. Here, Rav Shapiro is saying is that unlike halacha, that has had certain things that are new, if you will, new things, new technologies, new circumstances for the people, and so on, the ideology, if you will, didn't change. The Da'at Torah, the opinion of the Torah, of the Rashba, of the Rambam, of Moshe Rabbeinu, is the same then, and it's the same now. Nothing has changed. Few circumstances from time to time that are completely new would need a further review, but those are few and far in between. Meaning that the actual HaShkafa that the Rambam had is the very same one that we have to apply to our lives today. And even more so, he says, the Torah HaShkafa depends much more on the Mussar than Halacha does. And the Rambam's 13 principles of faith are nowhere to be found in the Gemara, and nowhere brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. Yet the Rambam, which the entire Shulchan Aruch is based on, 99% of the Shulchan Aruch is the Rambam. The Rambam says that if you do not believe in one of them, or you even have a doubt regarding one of them, you are considered an apikos, a heretic. And for all practical purposes, you're not considered part of Am Yisrael. So, for all of those people that say, no, listen, I don't need to believe in the 13 principles of faith because it wasn't codified into law by the Shulchan Aruch. This is completely apikosu. This is heretical in every aspect known to person that knows what Torah is. When somebody tells you that you don't need to believe the Mashiach can come every single day because they don't see a specific verse according to their understanding in the 5 books of Moses, or you don't need to believe in the resurrection of the dead because they don't see a specific verse in the 5 books of Moses, this is apikosut. And many times you will see those very same rationalists, those very same heretics that we've called out in the past, be the very same people that preach this nonsense. Even though there's a Gemara that specifically says that if you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead, there's obviously you're not going to be resurrected yourself. It's a very severe punishment. The Rambam calls a person a heretic, where they're literally not considered part of Am Yisrael anymore. Their Judaism is on suspension. Now they're going to say, wait a minute, how could that be? It's not a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, or let's say in the 5 books of Moses, that you have to believe it. It doesn't have to be an halacha for it to be something that you have to apply to your life. For it to be obligatory for you to apply to your life. There is something called HaShkafa, which is based on Da'at Torah, the opinion of the Torah, that you have to treat no different than an halacha from Moshe Sinai. Now, of course, the heretics will disagree with this, but that's because they're not willing to change their lives. But if you ask all of the Gedolim, both alive and the ones that are preceded us, this is the way they've lived their life. If you look at the lives of the Arizal, you look at the lives of the Gaon Vilna, you look at the lives of all of the great rabbis among Am Yisrael, Rabbi Akiva Iger, Rabbi Akiva himself, the Chazon Ish, the Chafetz Chaim, all of the giants of the past, and you compare their lives, their behaviors, if you will, to the current giants, Rav Sternbach, Rav Kanievsky, Rav Yitzchak Yosef, Rav Mazuz, all of these giants, because of course you can't compare it to some average Joe that works at a supermarket with a t-shirt on. No, you have to compare it to the people that have delved into the Torah, meaning they know the most about it. The experts of the past to the experts of today. You see how they live their lives, how they think about what our responsibility. You see, it's the same thing. That's who we're supposed to learn from. We're not supposed to learn with some Joe Smith that decides that he knows better than the biggest rabbis in the world. That's not the way. You're not going to learn from some guy that says he's a doctor because he has a building, because he has patients, but he also has a killing record of killing about 80% of his patients. You're not going to go to a doctor like this. You're going to go to a doctor that has a track record, that has a history, that has a resume to match it, that has integrity, that has some type of teachings that you can depend on because other experts agree with. Not that there's some lone soldier or cowboy. So this is what the modern mentality would like people to think. Where they want you to think that if it comes to halacha, yes, you have to do it. But if it comes to HaShkafa, not so much. And there's nothing further from the truth. There's nothing further from the truth. And this is in essence what Rav Shapiro is telling us. He says that, I'm skipping around a little bit here, that when it comes to the issues of HaShkafa, unlike the issues of halacha that were codified and specified and so on, these great things, these HaShkafa were left for great Torah scholars to decide. Same concept when it comes to the teachings of today. How do we know what's the right HaShkafa? We look at the leaders. We look at the leaders of Am Yisrael. What are they saying we're supposed to do if something changed? If nothing has changed, then we obviously continue what has always been the Masoret of Am Yisrael. When a person disregards what the Masoret of Am Yisrael is and simply decides that they know better than the Chachamim, then you have to ask yourself, what if they're wrong? What if they're wrong? What if, okay, so they're saying that they know better than all the big rabbis out there. We're not talking about your local rabbis and your average Joes out there. No, we all do respect all the local rabbis out there, many of them being extraordinary Talmidei Chachamim. We don't learn from local rabbis as far as this is what the nation is supposed to do. We learn what the nation is supposed to do by the Gdolim, by the Gdolei Ador, by the leaders. So, if you're going to listen to some local person that doesn't care if you drive on Shabbat, that doesn't care if you are an adulterer, it doesn't care if you gamble, it doesn't care if you are in unethical businesses as long as you give tzedakah, doesn't care if you're doing all types of things that in essence are forbidden. Sometimes halachically, sometimes hashkafically. You're saying, no, but my rabbi told me to do it. Now, this rabbi, however you might like him, however good his speech is, however clever he is, when you go up to Shamayim, do you think they're going to consider his opinion like they consider the Rambam, like they consider the Rosh, like they consider the Baal Shulchan Aruch, like they consider the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, or his father, the Maran, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef? Are they going to consider their opinion of the Ben Ish Chai like his? Are they going to consider the opinion of the Steipler Gaon like his? Are they going to consider his opinion next to theirs? No. Which means what? If I follow the biggest rabbis in the world, the ones that are supporting the Torah like it always was, I'm going to follow the biggest dayanim in the world, the people that have delved into the Torah so much that they became poskim, they became dayanim, they became the leaders. Even if they're not popular and the world doesn't know them and they don't have necessarily YouTube channels, but the point is, they have done what exactly the Chazon Ish is saying, what the Gemara is saying, is they've put themselves in a situation where the world exists for them. That's who they are. They're dayanim, they are poskim, they're amazing. Right? Some are famous, some not so famous, but nonetheless, no one can question how extraordinary these people are. And not just one. I'm going to rely on the Rav Kanievsky of the world, on the Rav Mazuz of the world, on all of the Rav Gidon, Ben Moshe, all of the biggest guys in the world that are alive, and also their teachers, the Rav Ovadias, the Rav Mutzafi, the father Alav Shalom, the Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, his current Rav Mutzafi's rabbi, all of the great sages of the previous generation, and not just them, their teachers, and their teachers, and their teachers, all the way back to the Rambam, to the Rosh, to the Ran, to the Gemara, to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's one way I can rely. Or I can rely on this one guy and perhaps maybe three of his friends, none of which are internationally recognized as Dayanim, none of which are internationally recognized even as Talmidei Chachamim, none of which are even internationally recognized as even rabbis, none of which are internationally recognized as even decent people. But they say that they know better than all of the biggest rabbis that we just mentioned. Which one do you want to rely on? You want to rely on the biggest, most important people that ever existed in the last 3,000 years, that all feed off of each other, learn from each other, and repeat what each other do for the last 3,000 years? Or you want to learn from Uncle Scrooge and Gargamel, and perhaps maybe a few Pikachus in between that have a YouTube channel and maybe even a local shul that's 5,000 square feet. Which one do you want to learn from? This is what a normal person needs to evaluate before they follow the so-called modern way, the new way, the rational way. You have to be smart. If the guy that's telling me is right, okay, great, he's right. He's right. He is an innovator. He is something special. I'm going to follow him. And he's going to get me to Gan Eden, right? Okay. If the existing Masoret, the existing tradition is right, and I follow them, I also go to Gan Eden, right? Okay. But what if they're both wrong? What if the Uncle Scrooge of today and the Gargamel and the Pikachu, they're wrong, and whoever follows them, they're wrong, versus the Rishon LeZion, Chas v'Shalom, is wrong, or Rav Gidon is wrong, or Rav Ovadia is wrong, all the Rav Kanievsky, all the biggest leaders in the world, they're wrong. Which one is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to rebuke? Which one? Is he going to rebuke you for following the biggest leaders of the world? Or is he going to rebuke you for following the Gargamels and the Pikachus of the world? Which one? If you tell him, listen, I followed the biggest soldiers you have, the most popular soldiers you have, the most devoted soldiers you have, the people that delved into your Torah day and night for 80, 90, 100 years, for 16 to 20 hours a day. That's who I followed. They made a mistake. It's not my fault. I followed them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're right. You are right. You did what was normal. You actually followed Da Torah. Even if they're wrong, you're still right. You are right. Why? You follow Da Torah. But if you follow the little Pikachus of today from your local community that nobody knows and nobody cares about, and even when they know, they don't care about. In fact, people can't stand some of these people when they get to know them. You follow them, and they made a mistake. What are you going to tell them? Oh, I followed Da Torah. Hashem's going to tell you, that's not Da Torah. Da Torah was millions of Jews that were following the same tradition since Moshe Rabbeinu, not that. He said he has a new Da Torah. They said they have a new Da Torah. You didn't follow Da Torah. You followed Dat Yachid. And one of the main things in Judaism is there is no Dat Yachid. There's no individualistic opinion, the opinion of the individual. No such thing. No such thing unless you are a giant among giants, which who is these people? They're making lectures in their cars or making stories up as they go. Who are these people? This, Rabotai, is what a person needs to understand.